For years, Officer Dwyer pulled over black drivers, confident no one could challenge him. Every stop was a chance to intimidate, every complaint swept under the rug. Then, one evening, he stopped a man who seemed like just another easy target, until those 5 words froze him in place. "I'm your new police chief." Marcus Ellison wasn't just any driver. With 2 decades in internal affairs and a fierce commitment to justice, he was ready to expose Bell County's deep corruption and dismantle the system from within. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The autumn sun hung low on the horizon, painting Bell County's streets in long shadows. Marcus Ellison adjusted his navy tie, catching a glimpse of himself in the rearview mirror. 20 years of police work had left subtle marks on his face. A small scar above his right eyebrow from a corruption bust gone wrong, and eyes that had seen too much but remained steady and determined. His sedan glided past neat rows of ranch-style homes with manicured lawns. Campaign signs for the upcoming mayoral election dotted front yards like territorial markers. Marcus noticed how they clustered. Certain names dominated certain neighborhoods, telling a story about Bell County's invisible lines. The first step to real change, Marcus rehearsed quietly, his deep voice filling the car's interior, is acknowledging where we stand today. He paused, considering his next words carefully. The boxes in his back seat shifted slightly as he turned onto Maple Street. Family photos, law enforcement certificates, and 2 decades of case files, his life packed in cardboard, ready for a fresh start. A group of kids playing basketball in a driveway stopped to watch his car pass. Marcus nodded at them, noting how the black children's shoulders tensed slightly, their game pausing until his vehicle was safely passed. That small gesture told him everything he needed to know about police-community relations in Bell County. "We can't build trust," he continued his practice speech, "without first being honest about—" His words cut off as red and blue lights suddenly exploded in his rearview mirror, painting his car's interior in alternating colors. Marcus's heart rate picked up, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. He'd been pulled over enough times in his life to know the drill. 20 years wearing a badge hadn't changed that reality. He guided his car to the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. Through his side mirror, Marcus watched the patrol car's door swing open. A white officer emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the cocky swagger that Marcus had seen too many times before. The officer's hand rested casually on his holster as he approached, a gesture that could be procedure or threat, depending on who you asked. Marcus kept his hands visible on the steering wheel, breathing slowly, deliberately. The registration and insurance were in the glove compartment, but he knew better than to reach for them without being asked. His police chief's badge was in his breast pocket, but that too would wait. The officer, whose nameplate read Dwyer, tapped on the window with his flashlight, despite the fact that there was still plenty of daylight. Marcus pressed the button to lower it, keeping his movements smooth and predictable. "License and registration!" Dwyer barked, his flashlight beam sweeping across Marcus's face, then over the boxes in the back seat. "You were driving erratically back there." Failed to signal on that last turn. Marcus knew he'd signaled. He'd spent 20 years enforcing traffic laws. Following them was second nature. "Good evening, officer," he said, keeping his voice calm and professional. "I'd be happy to provide those. Would you like me to reach for them now?" Dwyer's jaw tightened at Marcus's composed response. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered, taking a step back and widening his stance. Marcus felt the familiar weight of the moment settle onto his shoulders. He'd been on both sides of this scenario, as the officer and as the black man being profiled. The irony wasn't lost on him that his first interaction in his new jurisdiction would be this. "Officer Dwyer," Marcus said carefully, I want to comply with your instructions, but I'd like to understand why you need me to exit the vehicle for a routine traffic stop. I said step out, Dwyer repeated, his voice taking on an edge that Marcus had heard too many times before. You got a lot of boxes in that car, looking awful suspicious for this time of day. Marcus noted the escalation in Dwyer's tone, the way his hand had moved closer to his weapon. In the growing darkness, another patrol car's lights appeared in the distance, responding to what was likely a backup call Dwyer had already made. The situation was deteriorating exactly the way Marcus had spent years teaching other officers to avoid. He could feel the weight of his chief's badge in his pocket, but revealing it too soon might only make things worse. For now, he had to navigate this moment carefully, aware that his handling of the next few minutes could set the tone for his entire tenure in Bell County. Keeping his movements deliberate and his voice steady, Marcus began to reach for his door handle. The approaching patrol car's siren grew louder, its lights joining Dwyer's in painting the darkening street in urgent flashes of red and blue. In his rearview mirror, Marcus could see phones emerging from nearby houses, residents beginning to record what was unfolding on their quiet suburban street. Marcus's fingers had barely touched the door handle when Dwyer's voice cracked through the evening air. Hands where I can see them. Both hands on the wheel, now! Marcus complied immediately, his palms pressing against the leather steering wheel. The setting sun cast long shadows across the dashboard, and sweat began to bead on his forehead despite the cool autumn air. Officer, Marcus tried again, his voice remaining measured. I have identification that will explain everything. Shut it, Dwyer cut him off, his flashlight beam now scanning the vehicle's interior more aggressively. You know how many stolen vehicles we get through here? Nice car like this, out-of-state plates, guy like you behind the wheel? Marcus felt his jaw tighten at the implication. This is my personal vehicle, Officer Dwyer. If you'll allow me to reach for my credentials— I said shut it! Dwyer's voice rose sharply. He keyed his shoulder radio, eyes never leaving Marcus. Dispatch. I'm gonna need additional units. Got a possible 1031 here on Maple. Drivers being uncooperative. Marcus watched in his side mirror as more residents emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion. A teenage girl in a yellow hoodie held up her phone, its camera lens catching the red and blue lights. 2 backup units were now visible in his rearview mirror, approaching fast. Step out of the vehicle slowly, Dwyer commanded, drawing his weapon. Keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing this situation was spiraling dangerously out of control. Officer, I'm going to comply, but I need to inform you that I'm— Out! Now! Dwyer's weapon was fully raised now, aimed directly at Marcus. I'm not asking again. Moving with deliberate slowness, Marcus opened his car door. The evening air hit his face as he emerged, hands raised above his head. His tie, perfectly knotted just minutes ago, felt suffocating now. On your knees! Dwyer barked, gesturing toward the road's centerline with his gun. Hands behind your head, fingers interlocked. More phones appeared in windows and doorways. Marcus could hear murmured conversations, some angry, some worried. The teenage girl with the yellow hoodie had moved closer, her phone steady as she captured every moment. Marcus lowered himself to his knees on the rough asphalt, the double yellow line beneath him. His pressed slacks would be ruined, but that was the least of his concerns. The position was humiliating, deliberately so, and he could feel dozens of eyes watching from the surrounding homes. 2 more patrol cars pulled up, their lights adding to the chaos of colors painting the street. 4 more officers emerged, weapons drawn, creating a semicircle around Marcus. Listen carefully, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly despite his position. In my left breast pocket, you'll find— Nobody told you to speak. Dwyer moved closer, his boots scraping against the road. You think you can just roll through our town in a car that's obviously not yours and start giving orders? A woman's voice called out from one of the porches. "This ain't right! He ain't done nothing!" "Get back inside, ma'am," one of the backup officers shouted. "This is police business." Marcus remained still, his fingers locked behind his head, feeling the evening chill through his suit jacket. He could hear car doors opening and closing as more residents emerged to witness the scene. The girl in the yellow hoodie had been joined by others, all with phones raised, all recording. "Running the plates now," another officer announced from behind Marcus. "Check for stolen vehicle reports," Dwyer instructed, his weapon still trained on Marcus. "Bet this one's hot. Probably grabbed it from Dallas or Houston." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, centering himself. 20 years of law enforcement experience told him this stop had nothing to do with turn signals or stolen cars. This was about power, about putting someone in their place, about maintaining what Dwyer saw as the natural order in Bell County. "Sir," one of the backup officers called out, "plates are coming back clean, registered to a Marcus Ellison from—" "Probably fake registration," Dwyer cut in. "These guys are getting smart with their paperwork these days." The asphalt was digging into Marcus's knees now, and he could feel the tension in the growing crowd. More voices were rising in protest, met with sharp commands from the officers to stay back. The girl in the yellow hoodie had somehow worked her way to an angle where she could capture both Marcus's face and Dwyer's aggressive stance. Through it all, Marcus remained still, his breath steady, his dignity intact despite the position they'd forced him into. He'd faced down corrupt officers before, brought down entire networks of police misconduct. But this moment was different. This wasn't an investigation. This was personal, immediate, and all too familiar to every black person who'd ever driven through a town where they didn't belong. The registration check continued in the background, but Dwyer seemed uninterested in the results. His focus remained fixed on Marcus, weapon ready, as if daring him to make the slightest movement that could justify escalation. Dwyer took a step closer, his boots crunching on loose gravel. "You know what I think? I think you're trying awful hard to sound educated for someone who just stole a nice car." Marcus kept his breathing steady, his fingers still locked behind his head. The position was becoming uncomfortable, but he maintained his composure. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job. But there's been a misunderstanding that we can easily clear up." "Oh, there's no misunderstanding here." Dwyer circled around Marcus, flashlight beam dancing across his suit jacket. "Nice clothes, too. Let me guess. Borrowed those for whatever scam you're running?" The crowd of onlookers had grown larger. Marcus could hear whispered conversations, the shuffle of feet on concrete, and the occasional angry outburst quickly hushed by others. The girl in the yellow hoodie had found a spot near a streetlight, her phone still recording steadily. "My credentials are in my left breast pocket," Marcus said clearly, making sure his voice carried to the other officers and the witnesses. "If you'll allow me to—" "What did I say about talking?" Dwyer snapped, moving closer. His breath smelled of coffee and mint gum. "You don't seem to understand how this works. I give the orders. You follow them. Simple enough for you?" The backup officers shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a younger man with ginger hair, spoke up. "Dispatch says the registration's solid, Dwyer. Owner's name is Marcus Ellison, coming from—" "Did I ask for commentary, Peterson?" Dwyer's voice carried a warning edge. "We're dealing with a suspicious subject who's been uncooperative from the start." Marcus felt his knees grinding against the asphalt, but he kept his voice level. "Officer Dwyer, I've complied with every command. I'm simply trying to resolve this situation peacefully." A woman's voice called from the growing crowd. "This is harassment. He ain't done nothing wrong." "Ma'am, step back, or you'll be arrested for interfering," Dwyer shouted, then turned his attention back to Marcus. "So articulate, aren't you? Bet you practice that tone real careful." making yourself sound all proper and important. More patrol cars arrived, their lights creating a disco effect across the darkening street. Marcus could see faces in every window of the surrounding houses now, could feel the tension building in the warm evening air. The crowd had grown to at least 30 people, many with phones raised. "Getting awful crowded out here," Dwyer commented, his tone mockingly casual. "Lot of witnesses to see what happens when people don't know their place." The ginger-haired officer, Peterson, stepped forward again. "Chuck, maybe you should secure the perimeter." Dwyer cut him off sharply. "Make sure none of these concerned citizens decide to interfere with police business." Marcus remained still, but his voice carried authority now. "Officer Dwyer, I want to be clear that I'm documenting every word and action of this encounter. Your badge number is clearly visible, and there are multiple witnesses recording." This seemed to amuse Dwyer, who let out a short laugh. "Documenting? That's cute. You know how many complaints I've had? Know how many stuck? This is Bell County, friend. Things work different here." The backup officers had spread out, forming a loose circle around the scene. Most looked uncertain now, especially as more residents emerged from their homes. The girl in the yellow hoodie had been joined by others, forming a wall of glowing phone screens. "Last time I'm going to say this," Marcus stated firmly. "My identification is in my left breast pocket. It will explain everything about who I am and why I'm here." Dwyer reached for his handcuffs, the metal gleaming in the strobing police lights. "Oh, we're way past explanations now. You've been resistant and uncooperative from the start. Time to take a ride downtown, see if we can't figure out where you really got this car." Peterson stepped forward again, his face troubled. "Chuck, hold up. Maybe we should check his ID first. The registration matches and—" "You questioning my judgment, Peterson?" Dwyer's voice was dangerous now. "Because I've got 15 years on this force, and I know a situation when I see one. This guy's been nothing but trouble since I lit him up." The crowd had grown restless. More voices were rising in protest, phones recording from every angle. Marcus could hear children asking questions, adults arguing with the officers maintaining the perimeter, car doors slamming as more residents arrived to witness the scene. Dwyer moved behind Marcus, handcuffs jingling. "All right, Mr. Proper Speech. Time to go downtown and have a real conversation about where you got this car, these clothes, and this attitude." Peterson's hand had moved to his own weapon, but his stance suggested uncertainty rather than threat. "Chuck, something's not right here. We should at least—" "One more word, Peterson, and you'll be on crossing guard duty for a month," Dwyer snapped, reaching for Marcus's wrists. His voice carried a smirk as he added, "Some people just need to learn respect for the law. Isn't that right, boy?" Marcus shifted slightly, his knees screaming from the rough asphalt. As Dwyer's fingers closed around his wrist, Marcus spoke in a voice that carried quiet authority across the now hushed street. "I'm your new police chief." The words hung in the air like smoke. Dwyer's grip loosened, then tightened again. "What did you say?" "I'm Marcus Ellison. Chief Marcus Ellison. My appointment papers and badge are in my left breast pocket, exactly where I've been telling you they are for the past 10 minutes. The silence was absolute. Even the crowd had stopped murmuring, phones still raised, but their owners frozen in shock. The red and blue lights continued their silent dance across the faces of the onlookers, highlighting expressions that ranged from stunned to vindicated. Peterson was the first to move. He took 2 quick steps forward, his hand dropping from his weapon. "Chief Ellison, from the Atlanta Internal Affairs Division?" "The same." Marcus kept his hands behind his head, maintaining his position even as he felt Dwyer's grip trembling slightly. "I believe Mayor Thompson sent out a department-wide memo last week about my arrival." A woman's voice cut through the tension. "I knew it. I knew something wasn't right about this." It was the same voice that had protested earlier. Y'all just couldn't help yourselves, could you? Dwyer's face had gone from red to white, then back to a deeper shade of crimson. The handcuffs jangled as his hands shook. You're lying. This is some kind of trick. Check my credentials, Marcus said calmly. They're right where I said they were, along with my badge, my appointment papers, and a letter of introduction from the mayor himself. Peterson moved closer, his eyes darting between Marcus and Dwyer. Chuck, maybe you should… Shut up, Dwyer's voice cracked. His fingers dug into Marcus's wrist hard enough to bruise. This is some kind of setup. You people always trying to make us look… Officer Dwyer, Marcus interrupted, his tone carrying the weight of 20 years of law enforcement experience. You're hurting me. Remove your hands immediately. More phones had appeared in the crowd. The girl in the yellow hoodie had somehow worked her way closer, her phone steady as she captured every moment. The backup officers were exchanging glances, their uncertainty now mixed with something that looked like fear. Chuck, Peterson tried again. Let him up. This is really bad. Bad? A laugh bubbled up from the crowd. This is perfect. They finally caught themselves on camera. Dwyer's grip suddenly released. Marcus heard him stumble back a step, boots scraping on the road. The night air felt cool where Dwyer's hands had been. Stand up slowly, sir, Peterson said, moving to Marcus's side. Please. Marcus rose carefully, his knees protesting after so long on the ground. He kept his movements deliberate and calm, aware of the dozens of cameras still recording. As he straightened his suit jacket, he could see Dwyer in his peripheral vision, the officer's face a mask of confusion and growing horror. My credentials, Marcus said clearly, reaching slowly for his breast pocket. He removed his badge and ID, holding them out to Peterson. I believe these will clarify the situation. Peterson examined the documents, his face growing paler by the second. Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. He looked up at Marcus, then at Dwyer, then back at the badge in his trembling hands. These are real. He's the new chief. A wave of reactions rippled through the crowd. Someone clapped, others laughed. A few angry voices called out suggestions about what should happen to Dwyer. The backup officers had begun to edge away from their former positions, as if trying to distance themselves from what had just occurred. Officer Peterson, Marcus said, his voice carrying easily across the now quiet street, please secure my vehicle and ensure my belongings are safe. He straightened his tie, brushed some gravel dust from his knee, and finally turned to face Dwyer directly. The officer who had been so confident moments ago now looked like he might be sick. His hand rested on his belt, but nowhere near his weapon now. His eyes darted between Marcus's face and the crowd, perhaps finally realizing just how many witnesses were recording this moment. Officer Dwyer, Marcus said, each word precise and measured. I believe we need to have a conversation about proper procedure during traffic stops, and about several other matters, including your interesting interpretation of probable cause. He paused, letting the words sink in. That conversation will take place in my office, first thing tomorrow morning. A young voice from the crowd, probably the girl in the yellow hoodie, called out, This is going viral for sure. Marcus kept his eyes on Dwyer as he spoke again. For now, I suggest you return to the station and complete your incident report. I expect it to be detailed and accurate. Every word, every action, exactly as it occurred. He gestured to the phones, still recording. I'm sure we can cross-reference it with the video evidence if necessary. The fluorescent lights of Bell County Police Department buzzed overhead as Marcus walked through the front doors. The night shift dispatcher's eyes widened, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. Word traveled fast in small towns. Her phone was probably already blowing up with texts about what had happened on Main Street. Evening, Marcus said politely, showing his badge. I'm Chief Ellison. Yes, sir, she stammered, quickly standing. I'm Sandy Miller. We, weren't expecting you until tomorrow." Plans changed. Marcus glanced around the lobby, taking in the dated furniture and yellowing community bulletins. "Is Captain Reynolds still here?" Before Sandy could answer, a door burst open, and Mayor Jack Blevins strode in, his tie loosened and face flushed from rushing over. His politician's smile was firmly in place, but Marcus could see the strain around his eyes. "Chief Ellison!" Blevins called out, voice echoing off the institutional walls. "What an unexpected pleasure! Though I must say, this isn't quite how we planned to welcome you to Bell County." Marcus met the mayor's extended hand with a firm grip. No, it wasn't. Behind the mayor, Officer Dwyer slipped in through a side door, accompanied by a tall man in plain clothes who had to be Captain Reynolds. They spoke in hushed tones, Dwyer's shoulders hunched defensively. "Let's get you settled in your office," Blevins said quickly, steering Marcus away from the scene. "We can discuss this unfortunate misunderstanding in private." "Misunderstanding?" Marcus kept his voice level. "Is that what we're calling it?" The mayor's smile tightened as they passed through the bullpen. Officers pretended to focus on paperwork, but Marcus felt their eyes following him. Some faces showed curiosity, others uncertainty, and more than a few displayed open hostility. "Now, Marcus, may I call you Marcus?" Blevins didn't wait for permission. "We're a peaceful community here. Sure, we have our little hiccups now and then, but nothing that can't be worked out among friends." They reached the chief's office. The nameplate still read, "Chief William Hartford, retired." Marcus made a mental note to change that first thing tomorrow. "About tonight's incident," Blevins continued, closing the door behind them. "Officer Dwyer is one of our most experienced patrolmen. Perhaps a bit zealous in his duties sometimes, but his heart's in the right place." Marcus settled into the chair behind his new desk, letting the mayor's words hang in the air. The office was sparse, a few filing cabinets, a dusty computer monitor, and a window overlooking the parking lot where officers were gathering in small clusters, probably discussing him. "Mayor Blevins," Marcus said finally, "I was forced to kneel on a public street at gunpoint because one of your zealous officers decided I looked suspicious. Would you call that a hiccup?" Blevins's smile faltered. "Now, Chief, let's not blow things out of proportion. I'm sure once everyone calms down—" "Videos of the incident are already online," Marcus interrupted. "I counted at least 12 people recording. By morning, it'll be on every news channel in Texas." The mayor's face darkened. "That's exactly the kind of attention we don't need. Listen, Marcus, you seem like a reasonable man. Why don't we handle this internally? A brief suspension for Dwyer, some sensitivity training. I'll handle my department my way," Marcus said quietly, starting with a full review of Officer Dwyer's record and a formal investigation into tonight's events. That could be disruptive to morale. So is kneeling on asphalt with a gun pointed at your back. Their eyes locked across the desk. After a moment, Blevins forced his smile back into place. "Well, you've had a long day. Why don't we discuss this fresh in the morning? Say, 9 o'clock? Marcus nodded once. The mayor headed for the door, then paused. "Welcome to Bell County, Chief Ellison. I do hope you'll come to understand how we do things here." After Blevins left, Marcus sat in silence, listening to the building settle around him. The night shift continued outside his door, but no one knocked. He could hear fragments of whispered conversations when officers passed by. His name mentioned, then quick footsteps hurrying away. He began exploring his new domain, opening drawers and cabinets. His predecessors' files were meticulously organized, though something about their neat labels felt too perfect, too clean. In the bottom drawer, he found a stack of complaint forms, all marked closed in red ink. One file was thicker than the others, dated just 3 months ago. The complaint alleged excessive force during an arrest. Multiple officers involved, a teenage suspect, witnesses who suddenly became unavailable. Marcus remembered seeing something about protests in Bell County around that time, but the story had disappeared quickly from the news. The file was marked "Closed, no evidence," in the same red ink as the others. But as Marcus flipped through the pages, he noticed gaps in the narrative, missing statements, convenient equipment malfunctions. Every loose end had been neatly tied up, every question answered with bureaucratic precision. He set the file aside, making a mental note to dig deeper. The incident might be closed according to the paperwork, but 20 years in internal affairs had taught him that the tidiest files often hid the biggest messes. Morning light filtered through the blinds as Marcus sat at his desk, surrounded by stacks of reports and a cup of cooling coffee. The security footage from 3 months ago played on his computer screen, or what remained of it. Huge chunks were missing, conveniently during key moments of the incident. Marcus paused the video, rubbing his tired eyes. The teenager, James Wilson, had been walking home from basketball practice when officers responded to a suspicious person call. The footage showed the initial stop, then cut out for 18 crucial minutes. When it resumed, James was being loaded into an ambulance with a broken arm and facial injuries. A knock at his door made him look up. Officer Sarah Chen stood in the doorway, a young officer who'd been mentioned in several witness statements as being present that night. "Come in, Officer Chen," Marcus said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Thank you for meeting with me." Chen sat stiffly, her hands clasped in her lap. "You wanted to discuss the Wilson case, sir?" "Yes." Marcus pulled out the incident report. "Your statement says you arrived after the situation was already under control, but witnesses place you there during the entire encounter. Want to explain the discrepancy?" Chen's eyes darted to the door, then back to Marcus. "My report is accurate, sir." "Is it?" Marcus leaned forward. "Because I've got 3 separate witnesses who say you tried to stop Officer Dwyer from escalating the situation. They say you called for medical help before anyone else realized how badly James was hurt." Color drained from Chen's face. She lowered her voice to barely above a whisper. "Chief, you don't understand how things work here? Then explain it to me." Chen glanced at the door again. "We have a code. Anyone who breaks it, things happen. Equipment malfunctions. Backup arrives late. Reports get lost. Are you saying officers deliberately put their colleagues at risk? I'm saying nothing happens by accident here." Chen's knuckles were white where she gripped her hands together. "After what happened to James, I tried to file a complete report. The next day, my locker was broken into. Nothing taken, just moved around. A message." Marcus studied her face. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because maybe you're different." Chen met his eyes. "What happened to you last night? That was Dwyer sending a message. But you didn't back down. Maybe you can actually change things." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll need your help. The real story of what happened that night. They'll know it was me. Not if we're smart about it." Marcus pulled out a fresh notepad. "Tell me everything, Officer Chen. Every detail you remember." For the next hour, Chen spoke quietly while Marcus took notes. The picture she painted was ugly, routine harassment masked as proactive policing, evidence tampering, witnesses pressured into changing statements, a system designed to protect itself at any cost. As the sun climbed higher, Marcus drove through Bell County's east side, where modest homes sat close together behind chain-link fences. He pulled up to the Wilson house, a well-maintained bungalow with potted plants on the porch. James's mother, Patricia Wilson, answered his knock. She was a tall woman with tired eyes, wearing scrubs from her nursing shift. "Can I help you?" "Mrs. Wilson, I'm Marcus Ellison, the new police chief." He showed his badge. "I'd like to talk about what happened to James." She studied him for a long moment before stepping back. "Come in." The living room was neat, but lived in. Family photos covering the walls. James smiled from a recent basketball team picture, his arm still in a cast. "James is at physical therapy," Patricia said, sitting on the couch. 3 months later, and he still can't fully straighten his arm. "I've been reviewing his case," Marcus said. "The official report doesn't match witness statements or his injuries." Patricia's laugh was bitter. "Of course it doesn't. They said he resisted, that he fought back. My boy knows better than that. He knows what happens to young black men who fight back." "I believe you," Marcus said quietly. "And I believe James." She looked at him sharply. "What good does that do us now?" "I'm reopening the investigation. Not just into what happened that night, but the cover-up afterward." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I can't promise it will be quick or easy, but I promise you this. I will get justice for James." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Why should I trust you?" "Because last night, I was the one kneeling on that street." Marcus's voice was soft, but firm. "I know exactly what your son went through, and I won't rest until every officer involved is held accountable." She wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. "What do you need from us?" "For now, just patience, and keep James safe." Marcus stood. "I'll be in touch soon." As he walked back to his car, Marcus noticed an unmarked Crown Victoria idling across the street. The windows were tinted, but he could make out 2 figures inside. The car pulled away as soon as he looked directly at it, turning smoothly onto a side street. Back at the station, Marcus strode through the squad room, aware of the eyes tracking his movement. The morning's tense energy had shifted to something darker. Officers who'd been chatty earlier now spoke in whispers, conversations dying as he passed. He found Dwyer in the break room, laughing with 2 other officers who quickly found reasons to leave. A heavy-set man in a cheap suit, clearly the union representative, stood beside him. "Officer Dwyer," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the room. "My office. Now." Dwyer took his time finishing his coffee, setting the mug down with deliberate slowness. "Of course, Chief. Bob here will be joining us." He gestured to the union rep. "Fine by me." Marcus held the door, watching them file in. Inside his office, Marcus closed the door and sat behind his desk. He pulled out a thick folder and let it drop with a solid thump. "Do you know what this is, Officer Dwyer?" "Can't say that I do, sir." Dwyer's tone made the "sir" sound like an insult. 6 excessive force complaints in the past year. 3 involving minority suspects. All mysteriously cleared without investigation. Marcus opened the folder. Plus last night's incident with me. The union rep, Bob, cleared his throat. "If this is about last night, Officer Dwyer was following standard protocol for a suspicious vehicle stop." "Was he?" Marcus's voice remained calm. "Because I've reviewed our protocols. Nowhere do they authorize drawing a weapon on an unarmed civilian who's fully complying. Nowhere do they permit forcing someone to kneel on the road without probable cause." "The officer had reasonable suspicion," Bob started. "Based on what?" Marcus cut in. "My race? My car? Please, explain to me what made me suspicious." Dwyer's face reddened. "You were driving erratically. The dashcam footage shows otherwise." Marcus pulled out a printout. "Just like the footage from the Wilson case showed no resistance before that teenager ended up with a broken arm." "You're way out of line," Dwyer snapped, standing up. "You can't come in here and start throwing around accusations." "Sit down, officer." Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. "I'm not throwing accusations. I'm stating facts. Facts that are going to come out, one way or another." Bob shifted uncomfortably. "Chief Ellison, perhaps we could discuss this more productively." "This isn't a discussion." Marcus stood, matching Dwyer's height. "This is me informing Officer Dwyer that things are changing. The old ways of doing business? They're done. Every complaint will be investigated. Every use of force will be reviewed. Every officer will be held accountable. You're making a mistake, Dwyer said, his voice low and threatening. This department has ways of dealing with trouble. Is that a threat, officer? Just stating facts, Dwyer mimicked. Sir. Marcus walked around his desk until he stood face to face with Dwyer. Let me be clear. I've dealt with corrupt officers before. I've taken down entire precincts. Your intimidation tactics? They don't work on me. We'll see about that. Dwyer turned to leave, Bob hurrying after him. One more thing, Marcus called after them. Effective immediately. You're on desk duty pending review of last night's incident. Dwyer spun around. You can't do that. I just did. Through his office windows, Marcus watched Dwyer storm through the squad room, kicking a trash can. Officers gathered around him as he gestured angrily. Some shot hostile glances toward Marcus's office. The afternoon dragged on, filled with pointed silences and slammed doors. Marcus worked late, reviewing more case files, building a clearer picture of the department's problems. When he finally left, the parking lot was nearly empty. His phone buzzed as he reached his car. Unknown number. He opened the message and froze. Go back where you came from. A second message followed immediately. We're watching you. Marcus scanned the dark parking lot. Nothing moved except shadows cast by security lights. He got in his car, checking the back seat before starting the engine. The drive home was tense. Every set of headlights in his rearview mirror made him tighten his grip on the steering wheel. He took a longer route, making random turns to ensure he wasn't being followed. His new house was a modest ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood. As he pulled into the driveway, he noticed small things that seemed off. The porch light he'd left on was dark. One of his moving boxes on the front step had been shifted slightly. Inside, Marcus did a thorough check of every room, gun drawn. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but something felt wrong. Little things, a window blind slightly askew, a door that didn't quite latch the same way. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Nice house. Shame if something happened to it. Marcus walked to his front window and looked out at the street. Somewhere out there, someone was watching. Waiting. He drew the blinds and started making calls. It was time to install security cameras. Marcus sat in Alberta Price's living room, surrounded by decades of history. Framed photos covered the walls, civil rights marches, community gatherings, generations of students. The elderly woman poured tea with steady hands, her keen eyes studying him. So you're the new chief, causing all this commotion, Alberta said, settling into her worn armchair. About time someone shook things up around here. You've been following the situation? Marcus asked, accepting the tea. Child, I've been following every situation in this town for 40 years. She adjusted her glasses. Taught half these officers when they were kids, including that Dwyer boy. He was trouble even then. Marcus leaned forward. What can you tell me about the department's history? It's not pretty. Alberta reached for a thick photo album. See this? 1985 protest, after they beat a black teenager nearly to death. No charges filed. This one? 1992, when they planted evidence on the pastor's son. 2003, shot an unarmed man in his own backyard. She flipped through pages of newspaper clippings. Some faces change, but the story stays the same. Until now, Marcus said firmly. Alberta's expression softened. I hope you're right, but you'll need help. That's why I asked Rachel to join us. On cue, the doorbell rang. Alberta nodded toward the front door. That'll be her now. Officer Rachel Green entered, still in uniform, but clearly uncomfortable in it. She was younger than Marcus expected, with determined eyes that carried a hint of worry. Chief Ellison, she said, standing awkwardly until Alberta gestured for her to sit. I'm sorry about what happened with Officer Dwyer. It's not right. Have a seat, Rachel, Alberta said warmly. Tell the chief what you told me. Rachel perched on the edge of the couch. I've only been on the force 8 months, but I've seen enough. The racial profiling, the covered-up complaints, the way they pressure us to look the other way. She took a deep breath. Last week, I filed a report about excessive force. Next day, it was gone from the system. When I asked about it, my sergeant said I must have forgotten to save it properly. Marcus nodded. The Wilson case? You know about that? Rachel's eyes widened. I'm learning, but there's a lot I still need to know. Alberta set down her tea. Rachel comes from a police family. Her daddy was a state trooper. Uncle's still on the force 2 counties over. She knows the good and the bad of it. That's why they trust me, Rachel added. They think I'm one of them. They don't guard their words around me. But I can't stay silent anymore. Not after seeing... She trailed off, hands twisting in her lap. It's dangerous, what you're doing, Marcus warned. Coming here, talking to me. They'll retaliate if they find out. They already are, Rachel said quietly. Little things. Bad assignments, equipment shortages, backup arriving just a little slower than it should. Alberta reached over and patted Rachel's hand. That's why we need to work together. Rachel has access, I have connections, and you have authority. Together, we might actually change things. Marcus studied them both. The veteran activist who'd seen it all, the rookie cop risking her career for what was right. What exactly are you proposing? I can get you information, Rachel said. There's an internal complaint log that never makes it to official records. Officers write things down thinking they'll disappear, but I know where they keep the original papers. And I know every victim, every witness, every family that's been wronged, Alberta added. People who've been afraid to speak up, but might now if they knew someone was finally listening. Marcus considered the risks. If we do this, we do it carefully. No paper trail, no electronic communications that can be traced. I have a secure copy of the complaint log in my car right now, Rachel said. Been carrying it for days, waiting for the right moment. She pulled out a manila envelope. 3 years of incidents, all documented by the officers themselves. They think these records are destroyed each month, but the clerk keeps the originals. Marcus took the envelope, feeling its weight. This is a start, but we'll need more. We'll get it, Alberta said firmly. Rachel can be our eyes inside. I'll work my community connections, and you keep pushing from the top. They won't expect us to work together. That's our advantage. Meet here, Rachel suggested. Mrs. Price's house is safe. They'd never suspect. They suspect everything, Alberta corrected. But they've been watching me so long, they've gotten lazy about it. We'll use that. Marcus looked around the room again, seeing it differently now. Not just a retired teacher's home, but a command center for justice. The photos on the walls weren't just memories. They were reminders that change was possible, that resistance had a history here. All right, he said. We work together, but carefully. No risks we don't have to take. And if anyone gets a hint of trouble, we protect each other, Alberta finished. That's what community means. Rachel straightened her uniform, preparing to leave. I should get back before anyone notices I'm gone. I'll start gathering more evidence, but carefully. And I'll start making calls, Alberta said. Quietly letting certain people know they might finally get their chance to be heard. Marcus spread the complaint logs across his desk, the yellow light of his office lamp casting shadows over page after page of documented abuse. His fingers traced down columns of dates, names, and incident descriptions, each entry telling its own story of injustice. Third complaint against Dwyer in 2 months, he muttered, making notes. The pattern was impossible to miss. Excessive force, racial slurs, resisting arrest charges that seemed to appear whenever complaints were filed. But it wasn't just Dwyer. Officers Mitchell and Ramirez had similar patterns, always the same excuses. Subject became combative, feared for officer safety, suspected illegal substances. Always the same result. Complaint unfounded. His office phone rang. Mayor Blevins wanted to see him. 10 minutes later, Marcus walked into the mayor's wood-paneled office, complaint logs tucked under his arm. Blevins sat behind his massive desk, perfectly pressed suit, matching his carefully maintained silver hair. "Marcus, good to see you settling in." Blevins gestured to a chair, smile never reaching his eyes. "Coffee?" "No, thank you." Marcus remained standing. "We need to discuss these complaint logs." Blevins's smile flickered. "Ah, internal department matters. You know how paperwork can pile up." "This isn't about paperwork." Marcus placed the logs on the desk. "There's a clear pattern of abuse. Multiple officers, multiple incidents, no investigations. Now, Marcus," Blevins leaned back, spreading his hands, "you're new here. You don't understand how things work in a small town. We handle things differently." "Different doesn't mean wrong," Marcus said firmly. "And wrong doesn't become right just because it's tradition." Blevins stood, walking to his window. "You know, when we hired you, we were impressed by your record, your experience. But experience should teach wisdom, too. Wisdom to know when to adapt. I'm not here to adapt to corruption." Such a harsh word. Blevins turned, his genial mask slipping slightly. "We maintain peace here. Order. Sometimes that requires flexibility." "Flexibility got us here." Marcus held up one of the logs. "Thompson case, last year. 17-year-old boy beaten during a traffic stop. No dash cam footage, no investigation, no consequences. That situation was resolved to everyone's satisfaction. Everyone except the boy in the hospital." Blevins sighed, returning to his desk. "Marcus, you're making this harder than it needs to be. We chose you because we thought you'd understand the delicate balance required. You chose wrong." "Did we?" Blevins's voice hardened. "Because from where I sit, we chose exactly right. A black police chief with an impressive record, perfect for our diversity initiatives. Shows we're progressive, forward-thinking. But that only works if you play your part." Marcus stepped closer to the desk. "My part is enforcing the law. Equally. For everyone." "The law?" Blevins chuckled. "The law is what we say it is. This isn't some big city with oversight committees and civilian review boards. This is Bell County. We handle our own business. Not anymore. Think carefully, Marcus." Blevins's smile vanished completely. "You're new here. No connections, no support. Push too hard, and you might find yourself very isolated. Is that a threat? A reality check." Blevins stood again. "Now, why don't you take the weekend? Clear your head. Come Monday, we can discuss more. Productive approaches to your role here." Marcus gathered the logs. "We'll discuss these complaints and the officers involved." "Marcus," Blevins called as he reached the door, "don't make enemies you don't need to make." The drive home was tense, Marcus's knuckles white on the steering wheel. The sun had set, leaving the streets dark except for scattered pools of lamplight. He pulled into his driveway, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in the silence. The crunch of gravel made him look up. Nothing moved in the shadows. He stepped out of the car and immediately heard the soft hiss of air. All 4 tires methodically slashed. Marcus pulled out his phone, snapped photos in the harsh glare of his flash. The cuts were clean, professional, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. He called it in, knowing what would happen. 5 minutes later, Officer Mitchell arrived, barely hiding his smirk. "Looks like vandalism, Chief," Mitchell said, not bothering to take notes. "Probably just kids." Kids with tactical knives who knew exactly where I live? Mitchell shrugged. You want to file a report? You know I do. Well, I'll get right on that. Mitchell turned to leave. But you know how it is with random vandalism. Hard to investigate without leads. Marcus watched him drive away, then looked back at his car, settled useless on its rims. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. Marcus parked his borrowed car in front of Alberta's modest brick home. The evening sun cast long shadows across her well-tended garden, where marigolds and zinnias added splashes of color. He grabbed his briefcase, filled with complaint logs and evidence, and walked up the neat concrete path. Alberta opened the door before he could knock. "Come in quickly," she said, ushering him inside. "I've got coffee ready, and we need to talk." Her living room was warm and inviting, with worn but clean furniture and walls covered in framed photos. Generations of students she'd taught, community events she'd organized, protests she'd led. The coffee table was already spread with newspapers and documents. "I've been doing some digging of my own," Alberta said, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs. "Called some of my old students, people who've had run-ins with Dwyer and his crew. The stories they're telling me—" She shook her head. Marcus settled into an armchair, pulling out the complaint logs. "It's worse than we thought. Every complaint buried. Every investigation stopped before it started. And the mayor—" He described his confrontation with Blevins. Alberta snorted. "That man's been covering up dirt since before you were born. Back in '85, when they beat that young boy outside the high school—" She stopped, looking at a particular photo on the wall. "His mama was one of my students. Nothing changed then, either. It's changing now," Marcus said firmly. "Look at this pattern." He spread the logs across her coffee table. Same officers, same excuses, same cover-ups. But they got sloppy. Left paper trails. Alberta leaned forward, adjusting her reading glasses. "Mitchell's name keeps coming up. He was Dwyer's training officer, you know. Taught him everything he knows about being the worst kind of—" The crash of breaking glass cut her off. A brick sailed through the front window, sending shards flying across the room. Alberta jerked back with a startled cry. Marcus was on his feet instantly, moving toward her. "Stay down!" he ordered, quickly scanning for more projectiles. The brick had landed near the fireplace, a piece of paper wrapped around it with rubber bands. Outside, they heard car tires squealing. Marcus moved cautiously to the window, keeping low. The vehicle was already gone, but he caught a glimpse of what looked like a dark SUV turning the corner. "Are you hurt?" he asked Alberta, who was brushing glass off her sleeve. "Just startled," she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "What's on that paper?" Marcus carefully unwrapped the note. Written in block letters, "Keep your mouth shut, or the next one won't miss." Before either could speak, they heard the hiss of spray paint outside. Marcus rushed to the door, but Alberta grabbed his arm. "Wait! They might be armed." They heard more tires squealing, then silence. When they looked outside, the message was clear. Crude racial slurs covered Alberta's front wall in neon orange paint. Alberta stood in her doorway, staring at the defaced wall of her home of 40 years. Her shoulders were straight, but Marcus saw her hands trembling. "Well," she said quietly, "they're certainly not being subtle anymore." Marcus was already on his phone, calling it in. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived, lights flashing. Officers Peterson and Rodriguez stepped out, looking almost bored. "Probably just kids," Peterson said, barely glancing at the brick. "You know how they get on weekend nights?" "Kids?" Alberta's voice cracked like a whip. "Kids who know I'm helping the chief investigate police corruption. Kids with police-issued tactical vehicles?" Rodriguez shrugged, making a show of writing in his notepad. "No way to prove who did it. Could be anyone upset about anything." "Those slurs aren't anything," Marcus said coldly. This is a hate crime and a direct threat against a witness in an ongoing investigation. Investigation? Peterson raised an eyebrow. Hadn't heard about any official investigation. Then you haven't been paying attention. Marcus took out his phone, photographing everything. The brick, the note, the spray paint, the officer's apparent lack of interest. Well, we'll file a report, Rodriguez said, already heading back to his car. But without witnesses. They drove away, leaving Marcus and Alberta standing in her garden, now littered with broken glass. The setting sun made the orange spray paint seem to glow like toxic fire. Alberta's hands had stopped shaking. Her face settled into the determined expression Marcus had seen in those old protest photos. They think they can scare me? I've been fighting these battles since before they were born. You don't have to, Marcus began. Don't you dare tell me to back down, she cut him off. This is my home, my community, and I'm not letting them win. Not again. Marcus nodded slowly. We'll need to document everything. Set up cameras. Rachel can help us track that SUV. And I'll call my people, Alberta said. Every one of those students on my wall has a story to tell. Time they were heard. We'll fight this together, Marcus promised, looking at the hateful words marring her home. And we'll win. Alberta picked up a piece of broken glass, turned it over in her hand. They broke my window, she said quietly. But they can't break us. Marcus sat in his car outside the precinct, checking his watch for the third time. The parking lot was nearly empty at 11:30 p.m. Just 2 patrol cars and a few personal vehicles remained. Rachel's text had confirmed she was in position, manning the dispatch desk for the night shift. His phone buzzed. Security's doing their round, Rachel's message read. Back entrance clear for next 15 minutes. Marcus pulled on black gloves and grabbed his duffel bag. The night air was cool against his face as he moved quickly but casually toward the building's rear entrance. Rachel had left it propped open with a piece of tape over the lock, sloppy but effective. Inside, the hallways were dim, lit only by emergency lights. Marcus's shoes, specially chosen for silence, made no sound on the linoleum floor. He knew the layout by heart now, but seeing the precinct this empty was unsettling. Rachel met him at the stairs, her face tight with tension. Server room's still unlocked, she whispered. Thompson's too lazy to check it during his rounds, but we've got to hurry. Shift change is in 40 minutes. They moved quickly down to the basement level. The server room hummed with cooling fans and blinking lights. Rachel pulled out a laptop while Marcus kept watch at the door. The footage was deleted, Rachel muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. But IT never does a secure wipe. Too much work. Should still be in the backup cache. Marcus checked his watch again. 10 minutes, Max, then we're out. Almost there. Rachel's face was lit by the blue glow of the screen. Got it. Pulling now. But there's something else. Looks like email exchanges about the incident. Downloading those too. A door slammed somewhere above them. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Thompson's early, Rachel hissed. Hide! Marcus ducked behind a server rack, while Rachel quickly minimized windows and pretended to be checking routine logs. The footsteps passed their door and continued down the hall. That was close, Marcus breathed once the steps faded. How much longer? Done? Rachel ejected a thumb drive and handed it to Marcus. Everything's there. Footage, emails, deletion logs, but... She hesitated. They'll know someone accessed these files. The system logs all queries. How long before they notice? It does security checks every morning. By 8, they'll know. Marcus pocketed the drive. Then we better make this count. You should get back to dispatch. They crept back upstairs, separating at the second floor. Marcus headed for the rear exit while Rachel returned to her post. He was almost there when voices approached from around the corner. Swear I heard something down in the basement, Thompson was saying. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, heart pounding. The voices grew closer. "Probably just the AC acting up again," another officer replied. "Place is falling apart. Still gonna check it out." The footsteps moved away. Marcus waited 30 seconds, then slipped out the back door into the night air. He walked calmly to his car, fighting the urge to run. Once inside, he texted Rachel. "Clear. Delete the security footage from the last hour if you can." "Already done," she replied. "But Officer Miller saw me leaving the server room. He's suspicious." Marcus started his car, keeping the lights off until he reached the street. The thumb drive felt heavy in his pocket. Their first real evidence, but at what cost? Rachel's cover was likely blown. As he drove home, Marcus's phone buzzed again. "Rachel, Miller's making calls. Word's spreading that I'm helping you. What do we do?" Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. They'd known this might happen, but not so soon. Rachel had put everything on the line. Her career, her safety, her family's legacy in law enforcement. And now there was no going back. He pulled over to respond, "Go home as soon as your shift ends. Don't talk to anyone. We'll meet tomorrow with Alberta." The streets were empty as Marcus drove through town, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The thumb drive contained what they needed: proof of the cover-up, evidence of who was involved. But now Rachel was exposed, and their enemies knew they were closing in. At a red light, Marcus glanced at his rearview mirror. No headlights behind him, but that didn't mean much. The real question was, how many officers were already getting calls and texts about Rachel's betrayal? How many were planning their next move? The light turned green. Marcus drove on, his mind racing through contingency plans. They had the evidence now, but getting it out safely, and protecting Rachel in the process, would be another challenge entirely. The night's operation was over, but the real danger was just beginning. Marcus kept one eye on his rearview mirror as he drove through the quiet streets. The thumb drive felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket. Something wasn't right. The roads were too empty, even for this time of night. A pair of headlights appeared behind him, closing fast. Marcus tensed, gripping the wheel tighter. The vehicle, a black SUV with tinted windows, was riding his bumper now. He pressed the accelerator, but the SUV matched his speed. Suddenly, the SUV swerved into the oncoming lane and pulled alongside him. Marcus caught a glimpse of masked figures inside before the SUV slammed into his driver's side. His car skidded, tires screaming against asphalt. Marcus fought the wheel, trying to maintain control, but another hit sent him spinning. His car crashed through a guardrail and down a shallow embankment, coming to rest against a tree. Dazed, ears ringing, Marcus tasted blood. The airbag had deployed, and his chest ached from the impact. Above, he heard car doors slamming, footsteps crunching on gravel. Training kicked in. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt and grabbed his flashlight from the center console. A heavy-duty model he'd carried since his days in internal affairs. He checked the thumb drive was still secure in his inside jacket pocket. 3 masked men approached his car. One held a baseball bat. Another had brass knuckles glinting in the streetlight. The third reached for Marcus's door handle. Marcus kicked the door open hard, catching the first attacker in the knee. The man stumbled back with a cry of pain. Marcus exploded out of the car, swinging his flashlight in a wide arc that caught the second man across the face. The heavy metal connecting with a satisfying crunch. The man with the bat swung wild. Marcus ducked, feeling the whoosh of air over his head. He drove his shoulder into the attacker's midsection, using the man's momentum to flip him over his back. The bat clattered away into the darkness. Pain exploded in Marcus's kidney as the third man landed a punch from behind. Marcus staggered but spun with the hit, bringing his elbow up into his attacker's throat. The man gagged and stumbled back. The first attacker was up again, favoring his injured knee but throwing practiced punches. Marcus recognized the stance: police combat training. He blocked a jab but caught another body shot that made his ribs scream. Marcus switched to defense, letting his attackers tire themselves out. His back pressed against his wrecked car as they circled him. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. The man he'd hit with the flashlight charged in. Marcus sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm and using his momentum to slam him face first into the car door. The attacker crumpled, mask askew, revealing a familiar jaw. Officer Thompson. The other two attacked together. Marcus caught a glancing blow from the brass knuckles that made his vision blur. He countered with a palm strike to one man's nose, feeling cartilage give way. The other man wrapped him in a bear hug from behind. Marcus drove his head back, connecting with his attacker's face. The grip loosened. He broke free and spun, landing 3 rapid punches to the man's solar plexus. As the attacker doubled over, Marcus brought his knee up into the man's face. The last man standing backed away, hands raised. "This isn't over," he growled, voice muffled by his mask. He grabbed his dazed partners and helped them scramble back up the embankment. Marcus watched the SUV speed away, memorizing as much of the plate number as he could see through his swelling eye. His whole body throbbed. Each breath sent sharp pains through his ribs. He retrieved his phone from the wreck of his car. The screen was cracked, but still worked. He called 911 first, reporting the accident, but not the attack. No point. He knew how that report would disappear. Next, he called Alberta. She answered on the first ring. "Marcus? What's wrong?" "They know," he said, wincing as he probed his ribs. "They just tried to take me out. Thompson was one of them." "Dear Lord, are you hurt?" "I'll live, but you need to get out of your house right now. They'll come for you next." "I'm not running," Alberta said firmly. "Not running, hiding. Just until we can release the evidence. Please, Alberta. I need you safe." A long pause. "I have a sister in Houston. I'll go there." "Good. Don't tell anyone where you're going. I'll call when it's safe." Marcus ended the call and dialed Rachel. No answer. He tried again, fear growing with each ring. Finally, her voice, breathless. "Marcus? Are you okay?" "Yeah, just got home. The whole department's buzzing about me helping you. Miller's been calling everyone." "Listen carefully," Marcus said, starting the long walk home. "Every step hurt. They just tried to kill me. You're not safe. Pack a bag and get out of town. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not even me." "But the evidence—" "I've got it. I'll find a way to release it. But I need to know you're safe first." "My aunt has a cabin up near Dallas," Rachel said. "No one knows about it." "Good. Go there. Turn off your phone once we hang up. I'll contact you through Alberta when it's time." Marcus limped along the dark street, one arm wrapped around his ribs. Blood dripped from his split lip, and his left eye was nearly swollen shut. But the thumb drive was safe, and his people would be too. The real war was about to begin. Marcus stood in front of the mirror in his bathroom, wincing as he buttoned his shirt over the purple bruises covering his torso. His left eye was swollen nearly shut, and butterfly bandages held together the cut above his eyebrow. Every breath sent sharp pains through his ribs, but he straightened his tie anyway. Today was the day. The First Baptist Church was already packed when he arrived. News vans lined the street outside, their satellite dishes reaching toward the morning sky. Marcus had called every local station, every newspaper within 50 miles. Whatever happened today, there would be witnesses. Reverend Jackson met him at the side door. The old man's eyes widened at Marcus's battered face. "Chief Ellison, are you sure about this? Maybe you should rest." "No time for rest, Reverend," Marcus said, checking the thumb drive in his pocket for the 100th time. "Evil thrives in darkness. Time to shine some light." Inside, The church hummed with tension. Camera crews jostled for position near the front. The pews were filled with a mix of faces: concerned citizens, activists, officers in plain clothes watching with hard eyes. Mayor Blevins sat in the front row, his usual polished smile replaced by a tight-lipped frown. Marcus made his way to the podium, each step carefully measured to hide his pain. Whispers rippled through the crowd at his appearance. He saw phones coming up to record his bruised face. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus began, his voice carrying to the rafters. "I called this meeting because the people of Bell County deserve the truth. For too long, there's been a cancer growing in our police department, a culture of violence, racism, and cover-ups." Movement near the back caught his eye. Dwyer had slipped in, standing with arms crossed, jaw clenched. Other officers clustered around him like a protective wall. Marcus continued. 2 months ago, a 17-year-old boy named James Wilson was beaten by police during a traffic stop. The official report claimed he resisted arrest. The dash cam footage mysteriously disappeared. The case was closed without investigation. He pulled out the thumb drive. Mayor Blevins stood up. "Chief Ellison, I must protest. Any evidence related to ongoing investigations—" "This isn't an investigation, Mayor," Marcus cut him off. "This is a cover-up, and it ends today." He plugged the drive into the laptop connected to the church's projector. The massive screen behind him flickered to life, showing grainy dash cam footage. The timestamp matched the night of James Wilson's arrest. The footage was brutal. It showed the teenager complying with officers, hands raised, while Dwyer and 2 others dragged him from the car. What followed made the crowd gasp. Systematic, methodical violence. Kicks to the ribs, batons across the back. The boy's screams echoed through the church's speakers. But it got worse. The footage jumped to later that night, showing the station's evidence room. Dwyer and several officers huddled around a computer, deleting files. The mayor's voice could be clearly heard off-screen. "Make sure it's all gone. This never happened." Marcus paused the playback. The silence in the church was deafening. Then someone started sobbing. James Wilson's mother, clutching her husband's arm. "This isn't an isolated incident," Marcus said into the silence. "I have documentation of dozens of similar cases. Excessive force, false arrests, evidence tampering, all swept under the rug by the same people sworn to protect and serve." The crowd erupted. Shouts of anger mixed with demands for justice. Reporters were already broadcasting live, their cameras sweeping between Marcus's bruised face and the damning images frozen on screen. Mayor Blevins stormed toward the podium. "This is outrageous. You have no authority to—" "He has every authority," the voice rang out from the back. A woman in a sharp suit stood up, holding up a badge. "Sarah Martinez, State Attorney General's Office. We've been monitoring the situation in Bell County for months. Chief Ellison has been working with us to expose systemic corruption." The mayor's face went pale. Dwyer and his officers started edging toward the door, but uniformed state troopers were already moving to block the exits. "This meeting is over," Blevins shouted, reaching for the laptop. "Let him try to hide the truth again," someone yelled. The crowd surged to their feet. Phones recorded from every angle as the mayor backed away from their anger. Marcus held up his hands for quiet. "The truth isn't just on this drive. It's been uploaded to secure servers. Copies have gone to state and federal authorities. The time for covering up is over." The church erupted again, this time with cheers and applause. Reporters shouted questions. The state attorney's people were already moving through the crowd, pulling aside witnesses and victims of police abuse. Marcus stepped back from the podium, letting the scene unfold. His ribs ached, his face throbbed, but for the first time since taking this job, He felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. The truth was out. The real work of cleaning up Bell County could finally begin. The state troopers moved with practiced efficiency, securing the church exits while Agent Martinez read Dwyer his rights. The former officer's face had gone from red with anger to ash white as silver handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "This is harassment," Mayor Blevins shouted as another agent approached him. "I'll have all your badges for this." "Actually, sir," the agent said calmly, producing a warrant, "we have enough evidence to charge you with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and facilitating hate crimes. Please place your hands behind your back." Marcus watched from the podium as two more officers, Sergeant Peters and Lieutenant Hayes, were also taken into custody. They had been Dwyer's closest allies in the department, featured prominently in the evidence room footage. The church was chaos. Reporters called out questions rapid fire, while photographers' flashes lit up the scene like lightning. Community members hugged and cried. Some older residents simply sat in the pews, shaking their heads in disbelief as decades of corruption finally came to light. Alberta Price made her way to Marcus's side, her eyes glistening. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said, squeezing his arm. "All these years of fighting, and finally—" "We're not done yet," Marcus reminded her, though he couldn't help smiling despite his bruised face. "This is just the beginning." Rachel Green pushed through the crowd to join them. She was still in uniform, having come straight from her shift. "Chief, the state police want us at the station. They're setting up a command center to start reviewing all our files." Outside, the morning had turned into a perfect Texas spring day, but the mood at the police station was anything but sunny. State investigators had already sealed off the evidence room and internal affairs offices. Officers who weren't under immediate suspicion were being interviewed one by one. Marcus led Alberta and Rachel through the controlled chaos to his office. Agent Martinez was waiting for them, along with James Wilson and his parents. The teenager's face still showed fading bruises from his encounter with Dwyer. "Mr. Wilson," Marcus said, extending his hand. "I'm sorry it took so long to get you justice." James shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Chief, for believing me when nobody else would." "We'll need all of you to give formal statements," Martinez said, pulling out a recorder. "Everything you've witnessed, every threat, every incident of retaliation. We're building a RICO case against the whole corrupt network." For the next 2 hours, they detailed everything. Alberta described decades of community complaints that had been ignored. Rachel outlined the department's culture of intimidation and silence. Marcus explained how he'd gathered evidence while dodging surveillance and threats. Through it all, they could hear the sounds of the station being turned inside out. Filing cabinets opened and closed. Computer hard drives were seized. Officers who had looked the other way for years were finally being forced to look truth in the face. Around noon, Martinez's phone buzzed. She checked it and smiled. The FBI just picked up 3 more conspirators, 2 former officers and a city council member. They were trying to flee to Louisiana. "How deep does this go?" Rachel asked, her voice tight with anger and disbelief. "Deep enough that we'll be here for months," Martinez replied. "But we're going to clean house completely. Chief Ellison, we'll need your help rebuilding this department from the ground up." Marcus nodded, wincing slightly at the pain in his ribs. "Whatever you need. The people of Bell County deserve real protection and service." A young state trooper knocked on the door. "Chief, there's a crowd gathering outside. They're asking to hear from you." Marcus stood carefully, straightening his tie again. Alberta and Rachel flanked him as he made his way to the station's front steps. James Wilson and his family followed close behind. The scene outside took his breath away. Hundreds of people filled the street. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. Church groups stood next to college students. Elderly residents who had seen too much mixed with young parents who wanted better for their children. Signs demanded justice and reform. Cameras turned to focus on Marcus as he stepped up to the microphone that had been set up. His bruised face would be on every news broadcast, but he didn't mind. Let people see the cost of standing up to corruption. "The truth is out," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "But truth without action means nothing. We have a chance now to build something better. A police department that truly serves and protects everyone equally. It won't be easy. Change never is. But look around you. Look at your neighbors standing beside you. This is what justice looks like. This is what hope looks like." Alberta squeezed his shoulder as the crowd cheered. Rachel stood tall in her uniform, tears streaming down her face. The Wilson family held each other, finally seeing the beginning of healing. Reporters called out questions about what would happen next, about who else might be arrested, about how long rebuilding would take. But Marcus just stood there, letting the moment sink in. The sun was high overhead now, shining down on all of them equally, warming away the last shadows of Bell County's dark past. A week had passed since the arrests. The Bell County Community Center buzzed with energy as residents filed in for the town hall meeting. Every seat was taken, with people standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. The air conditioning struggled against the heat of so many bodies packed together. Marcus stood at the side of the stage, reviewing his notes one last time. His bruises had faded to yellowish green, but his determination burned brighter than ever. Alberta sat in the front row, her silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights, while Rachel stood by the door in her freshly pressed uniform, her sergeant's stripes still crisp and new. "You ready for this?" Alberta asked as Marcus approached the podium. The microphone squealed briefly before settling into silence. "Good evening, everyone," Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. "We're here tonight not just to talk about what happened, but about where we go from here. The arrests last week were just the beginning. Real change takes time, commitment, and most importantly, it takes all of us working together." He outlined his vision for the department: mandatory de-escalation training, a civilian oversight board, body cameras for all officers, and community outreach programs. Each point was met with nods and murmurs of approval. "But first," Marcus continued, "I want to recognize someone who's been fighting for justice in Bell County longer than many of us have been alive. Mrs. Alberta Price has spent decades documenting abuses, supporting victims, and demanding accountability. Without her courage and persistence, we wouldn't be here today." Alberta's eyes widened in surprise as Marcus gestured for her to join him on stage. The crowd rose to their feet, applauding as she made her way up the steps. Someone started chanting her name, and soon the whole room joined in. "Mrs. Price will be chairing our new Civilian Oversight Board," Marcus announced, presenting her with an official certificate. "Her experience and wisdom will be invaluable as we rebuild trust between law enforcement and the community." Alberta stepped to the microphone, her voice thick with emotion. "I've seen a lot of false promises over the years," she said. "But what Chief Ellison and Sergeant Green, have done this past week gives me real hope. For the first time, we're not just talking about change. We're making it happen." Rachel's promotion ceremony followed. Marcus pinned the sergeant's stripes on her uniform himself, acknowledging her role in exposing the corruption. "Sergeant Green exemplifies the kind of leadership we need," he said. "Someone who puts justice above personal comfort, who stands up for what's right, even when it costs her." The meeting continued with community members sharing their stories and suggestions. People who had never dared speak up before found their voices. Marcus made sure every concern was noted, every idea considered. As the formal meeting wound down, people lingered in small groups, talking and connecting. Marcus noticed James Wilson and his family chatting with Rachel about joining the police academy's youth program. Alberta had gathered a group of elderly residents who were organizing a neighborhood watch. Outside, the summer evening was cooling off. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. Across the street from the community center, a large shape loomed under a tarp, waiting to be unveiled. The crowd gathered around as local artist Carmen Rodriguez stepped forward. "This mural," she announced, "is our testament to change. To everyone who fought for justice, and to those who will carry that fight forward." With help from several volunteers, she pulled away the tarp. Gasps and exclamations filled the air. The mural covered the entire side of the building, vibrant colors bringing the images to life. Marcus saw himself depicted in his chief's uniform, standing tall despite his injuries. Alberta stood beside him, her expression both fierce and nurturing, a lifetime of activism captured in her stance. Rachel completed the trio, representing the possibility of change from within the system. Above them, in bold letters that seemed to glow in the sunset, justice, dignity, courage. Children who had been playing nearby stopped to stare at the mural. One little girl pointed up at Alberta's image and said, "That's my grandma's friend. She comes over for tea." Marcus watched as people took photos, touched the wall gently, shared memories of their own struggles for justice. The mural wasn't just art, it was a promise to the community, a reminder that change was possible when people stood together. Alberta joined him, leaning on her cane. "You know," she said softly, "I used to walk past this building every day on my way to teach. Back then, we couldn't even dream of something like this." Rachel came over too, her new sergeant's stripes catching the last rays of sunlight. "It's strange seeing myself up there," she admitted. "I just did what felt right." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Marcus replied. "One person doing what's right, then another, then another." The children had resumed their game, playing freely in the street without fear. Their laughter echoed off the buildings, a sound of hope that had been too rare in Bell County. Marcus watched them, remembering every threat, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt during the investigation. Looking at those children now, at the proud faces of their parents, at the way people walked with their heads held higher, he knew without question that it had all been worth it. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.